You have felt it your entire life. That feeling of standing in a room full of people and still feeling like you are the only person there. Not lonely, not broken, just somewhere no one else can reach. Here is what cognitive psychology has found after decades of studying the most intelligent minds on Earth. The traits that made you feel too much, too different, too difficult. They are not flaws. They are 11 specific psychological signatures documented by researchers at Harvard, Stanford, and the London School of Economics that appear again and again in people with extremely high IQs. High intelligence does not look like confidence. It does not walk into a room and announce itself. It sits quietly near the window. It lies awake at 3 a.m. with questions no one around it seems to care about. It has spent years being told it is too sensitive, too distant, too strange. What if every single one of those things was never a weakness at all? What if it was always a signal? Before we name the signs, there are questions that need to be asked, not small questions, the kind nobody around you seems to be asking. Why does a mind that sees more rest less? Why does a person who feels more deeply struggle more with ordinary life? Why does intelligence, which is supposed to be an advantage, so often feel like the opposite? Here is the honest answer. A highly intelligent mind is not just a faster processor. It is a more sensitive one. You cannot turn on the depth for the things you enjoy and turn it off for the things that hurt. It does not work that way. It means your highs are higher, but it also means your lows carry more weight. A disappointment is not just a disappointment. A failure is not just a failure. It is evidence that the gap between who you are and who you know you could be is still there. And then there is the exhaustion, not the physical kind. The exhaustion of always being slightly ahead of the conversation and having to wait. The exhaustion of translating yourself into a language the people around you can receive. That exhaustion is real. It is not weakness. It is the natural consequence of a mind that was never built for a shallow life. Most people look at someone who prefers to be alone and they see a problem. But for a highly intelligent person, solitude is not about avoiding people. It is about recovering from them. A landmark study from the London School of Economics found that highly intelligent individuals reported significantly lower life satisfaction from frequent social interaction. Not because they dislike people, but because their brains cannot experience people casually. Every conversation, every facial expression, every word someone chose, and every word they didn't, all of it runs on full processing power. If this is you, here is what it feels like. You enjoy people, genuinely. Voice 2. But after a certain point, even with people you love, a quiet signal rises from somewhere deep inside. Enough. I need to go be alone now. And then comes the guilt. Nothing is wrong with you. Your solitude is maintenance, the only environment quiet enough for a mind like yours to finally breathe. For a highly intelligent person, the mind does not have a real off switch. Neuroscientist Rex Young found that higher intelligence is associated with connectivity between distant brain regions, all firing simultaneously. This is why rest is so difficult. The default mode network, the brain system responsible for internal thought and self-reflection, runs louder and more persistently in people with higher cognitive capacity. Even during sleep, even during stillness. If this is you, people tell you to just relax, to stop overthinking, and you want to. You genuinely do, but the mind has other plans. This is not a flaw. It is the sound of a brain that was simply built to never stop. Here is one of the biggest misconceptions about highly intelligent people: that they are cold, logical, detached. A study published in the journal Intelligence found that higher IQ correlated with significantly greater emotional reactivity and depth, particularly in response to art, moral questions, and human suffering. Not less emotion, more. You learned, probably young, to keep the inside quiet because the few times you let the full weight of what you were feeling show, it was too much for the people around you. So you learned to wear calm like a coat, but underneath that coat, you feel everything. The more a highly intelligent person knows, the more comfortable they become with not knowing. This connects to the Dunning-Kruger effect. Lower ability produces overconfidence because the person lacks enough knowledge to perceive the complexity of what they don't understand. Keith Stanovich of the University of Toronto found that the most intellectually capable individuals hold their beliefs more loosely. They treat conclusions as hypotheses, things to be tested, not defended. If this is you, people sometimes read your hesitation as uncertainty, but it is not uncertainty. It is precision. You simply refuse to claim a shore you have not actually reached. Most people treat changing their mind like losing a fight. Highly intelligent people do not work this way. They update. Research at the University of Michigan identifies cognitive flexibility as one of the most reliable markers of advanced problem-solving ability. Your belief is not you. It is just your current best understanding. People sometimes call you inconsistent, but you are not changing because you are unsure of yourself. You are changing because new information arrived and you respected it enough to let it change you. That is not indecision. That is intellectual integrity in motion. In most social environments, speed is rewarded. Voice 3. Highly intelligent people are almost never the fastest to respond. Research consistently shows that higher IQ correlates with greater accuracy in reading social cues, but also a need for more processing time before responding. They are not slower thinkers. They are gathering more data first. If this is you, you have thought of the perfect response 30 seconds after the moment passed, but that is the wrong reading. You are not slow. You are editing before you publish, and most people never even realize a draft existed. Highly intelligent people are often the worst procrastinators on the things that matter most to them. Research from Stanford found that this is not laziness. It is what they called complexity awareness. Before beginning significant work, a high IQ brain already comprehends the full scope of what excellent would actually require, every flaw the finished product might contain, every way it could fall short. The blank page is not empty. It is full of everything the finished thing needs to be. That is not laziness. That is a mind that can see the destination so clearly it is temporarily paralyzed by the journey. Highly intelligent people get bored faster than almost anyone around them. Neuroscientific research has linked higher cognitive ability to higher dopamine sensitivity in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's reward system for intellectual challenge. When that challenge disappears, the signal drops sharply. You fall deeply in love with a new interest. You pour yourself in completely. And then, one day, the feeling shifts. You're not broken. Your brain is hungry. It is not leaving things behind out of carelessness. It is leaving them behind because it has already learned everything they had to give. The more capable they are, the more highly intelligent people tend to doubt themselves. The deeper your understanding of a subject, the more clearly you can see how much remains uncertain. Intelligence does not produce certainty. It produces a more precise map of how much territory remains unexplored. If this is you, you have achieved real things. And still, in quiet moments, you wonder if it was luck. The doubt is not a weakness. It is a side effect of holding yourself to a standard most people around you will never even try to reach. The most capable person in the room is very often the most uncertain one. That is not contradiction. That is the cost of genuine self-awareness. This is the last sign, and perhaps the most quietly painful one, the feeling of not fully belonging anywhere. You can be liked, respected, included, and still feel, on some level, like a visitor. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi found that individuals with the greatest intellectual capacity almost universally described their inner lives as the most complex and the hardest to share. Not because they were uniquely suffering, but because they were experiencing life at a level of detail most people around them simply weren't. If this is you, you have spent years trying to find your people, and you have found good people, kind people, but there is still a part of you held just slightly in reserve. That feeling is not a verdict on your life. You're not someone who cannot belong. You're someone who belongs very specifically, very deeply, in places and with people that are simply harder to find. They exist. And the fact that you are still looking, still hoping, still reaching says everything about who you are. It is not loneliness. It is loyalty to a depth of connection that you refuse to pretend you don't need. The people who have learned to live well with a mind like this did not do it by fixing these traits. They stopped fighting what they were and started understanding it. They stopped asking, "What is wrong with me?" and started asking, "What is actually happening in me?" That shift is not a small thing. It is everything. You have spent a long time being told that the way you think is too much. But what if none of that was ever too much? What if it was exactly enough for the specific kind of life that a mind like yours is actually built for? That life begins the moment you stop seeing your mind as a problem to be solved and start seeing it for the first time as the answer